Oh, electric car, let me play you the song of my people. I think there have been enough articles written as to why most people think that the general population doesn't drive an electric car. But I'm gonna set all that aside, and I'll talk about some of the reasons why I personally don't drive an electric car. Will I ever? Well, that's difficult to tell, but hopefully by talking about it, maybe I can come to some kind of conclusion by the end of this video. I guess before we even get into the nitty-gritty details, let's just talk about a few things, like, for example, the infrastructure. For me, it's not even about the infrastructure that's surrounding the electric car. I think there's probably a decent amount of charging stations out there, and most likely I can accommodate my trips to be able to basically get into those charging stations that I need to, right? For me, it's more of a charging time at those charging stations. I don't want to stop and spend 30 minutes to an hour charging my vehicle. I just want to go in basically what I normally do, just stop by, fill it up, and be on my way. Now, most of the time this is not an issue, especially if I'm driving locally, but it does get into an issue, like, for example, when I'm going to, let's just say, to Florida, which I do visit pretty regularly. So it's roughly 300 and something mile trip, and I don't want to have to plan that trip out where I have to sit down, wait for that, for my car to finish charging. Every once in a while, yeah, I mean, you can make that argument. Oh, while you're waiting for your car to charge, you can go grab something to eat. Most of the time, though, the charging station is not right next to a place that I would like to eat to. So that means I gotta leave my car somewhere, go grab something to eat, if I'm gonna be sitting at some kind of restaurant, or always have it to go where I grab something and then go to the charging station and then eat inside my car at the charging station. So that overall rant just nicely transitions into probably the biggest thing for me, and I've really thought about what would be a good range for the electric vehicle to have in order for me to drive it. And I came up with a figure. I don't know why this figure is stuck in my head, but after doing a little bit of research, it turns out that even Elon Musk has the same figure inside his head, where it's roughly about 700 miles. Why 700 miles? I don't know. Maybe, like I said, maybe because 350 miles to my destination in Florida, and I would just feel like even if I went there, I could come back a nice distance or have a nice buffer, right? 700 miles probably would be like the top limit if you're driving 45 miles an hour, etc., with the AC off. But if an electric vehicle had the range of 700 miles, I think I would go and buy it pretty soon, a lot sooner than later. So there is a lot of speculation happening right now. I'm recording this video on May 14th, and supposedly in a couple of weeks there's going to be what's called a battery day, where Tesla comes out and it's basically going to release some kind of earth-shattering information. Everybody's kind of thinking that they're going to release information stating that they discovered a way to have a 100 kilowatt per hour battery, right? Or less, which makes it more competitive, or not makes it more competitive, it makes it equally as competitive as a combustion engine. I think that's about how much it costs roughly to translate between a combustion engine and an electric battery, right? Some people are actually speculating that the news is actually even going to be better than releasing information about the 100 kilowatt per hour battery. But I guess we'll see in a couple of weeks. As of right now, my mind really still hasn't changed. Now, if it does become affordable and if the range is increased significantly to that 700 mile theoretical range or higher, which would be fantastic. The other thing is, will that battery, that range, be included in more affordable electric vehicles? I don't want to spend $100,000 on a vehicle, an electric vehicle that has 700 mile range. I would rather at that point spend money on something like a Porsche 911. Now, yeah, I do understand electric vehicle is faster and everything like that, but for me, like I said, this is a preference on why I don't drive an electric vehicle. That would be one of them. I would rather get something like a Porsche 911 if I'm going to spend that much money already. Now, the biggest thing that would turn me away from, of course, the battery life is self-driving capabilities. In my opinion, the electric car is not an enjoyable, not an engaging car to drive. I saw Ford release that Mustang that might come in a manual transmission and it'd be electric, which would be just I don't know how I feel about that, but I think I would get it. Honestly, I think it's just ridiculous enough for me to buy an electric vehicle that actually has gears that I can shift. For everything else, since it's not engaging and I'm already spending that much money anyways, I want that car to drive me around. That would be the other, I guess, futuristic enough capability of that electric vehicle that if it had full autonomous capabilities, yes, I would definitely get it and, catch up on whatever I want to do. I mean, I spend more than an hour in traffic. If I had that much time to just sit down and read, I mean, I could catch up on so much reading. I can learn a new language if I wanted to. There'll be a lot of different things that I would orchestrate just to do in that time. So if you're not willing to spend over $100,000 on the electric vehicle, what ends up happening? You look at these, you start making sacrifices, aside from the battery and all that stuff. One of the biggest sacrifices that I think a person makes is with how the car looks. Sub $100,000 vehicles, I mean, if you're looking at majority, I would say 99% of the vehicles out there, or the electric vehicles out there, are just plain ugly. And there isn't enough of a selection sub $100,000 where you can start saying like, oh, okay, there's this vehicle, looks pretty decent. I guess with the exception of maybe the Model 3 that just came out recently, that would be the only vehicle that looks decent enough. It's still a little too small for my liking. I wish it was the size of the Model S, but I guess currently that's pretty much what you get. So yeah, am I going to drive an ugly car? Probably not. I've driven a couple of electric vehicles and I always seem to get some kind of sickness, and I think what it is just it doesn't have any kind of sound. Right now I've seen like the Porsche Taycan or whatever, they do that, I guess, sound through the speakers, and it kind of sounds okay. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, but it's still fake and I just don't like it. But if you really think about it, I mean, adding a muffler to like a car produces a different type of sound, and you've seen people adding all kinds of different mufflers, and one car can sound radically different just by altering what comes out of there and adding what kind of muffler you want, resonator, etc. So is it really that far of a stretch to just care that much about whether the sound is coming from a speaker or not? I don't know, but I wish that the electric cars just produce something, right? It could be like very futuristic sounding. I mean, they could just substitute their, I don't know what they have inside, like the gears with some whinier gears where it just starts going and like, instead of an actual exhaust. Or I don't know, like I said, maybe Porsche has really figured it out, and with that implemented speaker sound, and other car manufacturers are already doing that even with their regular combustion engine vehicles, just because they're too quiet, so they integrate some kind of cabin sound. just to make it sound a little bit nicer. I mean, I know even the SDI for a little bit, what they ended up doing was having this tube that went from the turbo to the inside of the cabin, just so you can have a little bit more extra turbo noise, which a lot of people hated. So I guess that's going to be a huge debate, but I would have to basically set aside some of those fake producing sound, I guess, electric cars to really make up my mind whether that would be that big of an issue for me or not. I know as of right now, I definitely like my sound right here, but if an electric vehicle produced this loud of a noise, I don't think I would like it. I think I would just turn it down, and I think everybody driving by would just say, like, turn down your speakers, idiot. Versus right now, it's like, oh, you know, the guy's got a loud ass exhaust. What can you do? So one last thing to kind of note about electric vehicle, especially the people driving electric vehicles, you don't become an environmentalist by buying that electric vehicle. So there are compromises, right? So one of the compromises for me is just don't take away my cars. Let's do a bunch of other stuff, right? I'll go ahead and I'll cave and I'll do a bunch of different things. And I think overall, I think I'll still be making a decent enough difference, right? So when I first wanted to get an electric car, I was kind of thinking about it. I said, okay, well, what if I go fully green, right? So let me contact my energy company, right, where I got my electricity from, and just see what kind of renewable energy option they had where I wouldn't feel guilty using up, you still got to charge it, right, at some point, and you're using up electricity that's coming from non-natural means. So let me see how much it would be to basically change to a more renewable energy kind of electricity, right? So it turns out that the company that I get electricity from doesn't have any kind of renewable energy alternatives. So to me, it kind of became pointless to buy an electric vehicle for environmental purposes, right? Now, is there anything else that I could do? Absolutely. So I started looking into Solar City and trying to see, because they started producing these really cool solar shingles and look like shingles on a roof. And again, aesthetics are a big thing. So people knew that they didn't want these massive solar panels on top, so they produced these solar shingles, and they look, like I said, they look like a little bit glossier roof than you would normally have. So I started looking into it, and it actually makes a lot of sense. Currently, I have two systems, two AC units, so I pay on summer months, some are like $200 to $300 a month. And has it been higher? Yeah, it's been higher a couple of times, but if you really look at it, and you, let's say, buy the solar shingle roof and convert your entire house into a self-sustained energy production system, well, then you basically don't have to feel as guilty about the environment, right? A, you're not getting electricity out of a plant that's producing already an insane amount of pollution, and B, you get to charge your electric vehicle the very green way, right? Now, yeah, there's still the battery production and everything like that, and how do you dispose of the battery, and that goes into the cost as well of maintenance, which we'll cover in just a second. But for the most part, like I said, I did look into it. It did make sense if I was buying a brand new house or building it myself. So at that point, I could say, oh, okay, put the roof on and pay it over a 30-year period, and it would basically factor into my house like my electric bill, right? So I would have that on a monthly basis. I technically would not have an electric bill, even though you cannot legally completely cut yourself off from a power company. But who knows, maybe you even produce more than enough to the point where you actually sell a little bit of electricity back to the company, and you actually you maybe even have a positive influx. I would assume by the time you sold your house, having that roof would definitely add some digits to the overall value of your house. So most likely it would actually pay for itself eventually. So yeah, I mean, for me, a couple of things that I really enjoy are cars, AC systems, right? I think it should be illegal for a car to come without an AC. I've seen people sell them, and I don't know. That just doesn't make sense to me. I was gonna say there's a cop behind me coming up, but he's going into the right lane, so I'm good. I don't know what it is, but it seems like more often than not when I'm recording these videos, a cop just shows up out of nowhere. So yeah, I want to keep my cars. I want to keep my AC inside the cars. Another really guilty pleasure that I know is terrible for the environment, but I just really like it, are styrofoam cups. Just let me enjoy my styrofoam cups. I'll do everything else, right? So, for example, just to give you a quick little, I guess, couple of things that I've done, a recap, is I've insulated my house completely. I've done the attic where it doesn't waste as much energy anymore. I don't have to run my AC system on full blast all the time. I've switched everything inside to LEDs. Whenever I purchase any kind of appliances, I go for the energy efficient appliances. Outside, I have more trees than I know what to do with. I have a lot of different plants. I recycle. I always have more recycling than garbage every single week, and I can go on and on and on. Like I said, the only thing is I definitely do like my cars. Now, yeah, even though I have vehicles like, you know, 2 Corvettes and my STI and a couple other cars, I don't drive every single car every single day, right? So, you know, I put on about 20 to 25,000 a year, but that's all of my cars combined. For you, maybe cars aren't a big deal. Maybe you don't have a YouTube channel called Car Mod Guy, and for you, maybe something else is a lot bigger of a deal, and you'll shift your attention towards improving your life or improving the environment by buying an electric vehicle, but kind of cutting down on improving your house environment or whatever it is, right? So you can kind of pick and choose. You don't have to 100% be an environmentalist or not be an environmentalist 100%. You can be somewhere in the middle, or try to strive for like 60, 70%. And I think if everybody kind of did that, I think the world would be a healthier place. So talking about the batteries, right? There's a shelf life for every single battery, and that's another thing that they might discuss on Battery Day, where they might say, like, I think they were talking about the 1,000,000-mile battery, where they actually might produce a battery that doesn't have to be changed so frequently as the ones that currently have to be changed, right? And even the ones that currently have to be changed, I think there's like somewhere around 7-8 year period. So you think, you know, like, okay, well, you know, when I buy a normal car, you know, I do my maintenance on it, I change my oil, like, et cetera, et cetera. This is just part of regular maintenance. True, but at the same time, when I buy an internal combustion engine vehicle, I don't ever envision myself saying, hey, 7 years from now, I'm going to be swapping out the engine. Does it happen? Yeah, sometimes it does happen. I mean, engines fail or whatever, and it could be an unpredictable expense, but I don't want that to be factored in, saying 7 years from now, I got to change my engine because it just stops working, or in this case, the batteries just stop charging completely. So overall, I'm very pro-progress, and I hope that manufacturers continue innovating and keep striving to not only, you know, produce a healthier environment, but, you know, I know they're all doing it for the money anyways. If it didn't make financial sense, they wouldn't do it. So with that, I mean, with that kind of competition, definitely change does happen, and new inventions come out, just striving to make a quicker and easier financial decision, right? So wherever the market's kind of going, that's where innovation is gonna keep going as well. So, and I hope in a few years that I can be recording these videos while not paying attention to the traffic and the cars driving me around. But as of right now, I definitely like my loud ass cars.